Hello everybody and welcome, and this is the Midnight McBride Show, episode number 20. And I've called this show Doors to Another Realm. That's Doors to Another Realm. And the reason I've called it this title is because I've got my good friend and ex-doorman Andy Allwood. Hello Andy.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
My pleasure, Andy, absolutely my pleasure. So I thought this show would be interesting. It's about your life and what you're up to now. But I've known you for a long time, and I knew you originally from working the doors in Bolton, but then I also knew you from Nuffield Health, or what used to be Virgin, from the gym, and in a very different manner, because when I first knew you working on the doors, it was more you were maybe keeping me out of trouble and picking me up off the floor when I was in a drunken stupor and such.
Right.
But once we got to the gym and I knew you outside the gym and we talked, I started to see another side to you. And I've known you long enough now to see the change in your life, you know, and where you're at now. And it's a beautiful story, and it's like a lot of men, you get into your 40s, perhaps into latter life, and you start to see things a bit differently, and you make some changes, and you go through maybe what they call the shift or a spiritual awakening, and you start to experience joy and bliss and experience life as it's meant to be, you know, which is fun. So we'll start off, Andy, and the title, like I said, Doors to Another Realm, it's your journey. So a Bolton lad initially. And maybe tell us, I know you told me when we did the pre-show chat which schools you went to.
I went to High Lawn initially. That was my primary school. And then I went to Sharples High School. Yeah. Left when I was 16.
Right. And then what did you do, your career? Because I didn't know you at this point. I met you later on in life.
No. I worked for a firm. They made sort of like car accessories for cars. I worked there for a few years. When I was about 21, I started working for British Steel at a steel warehouse. That was Markland Tubes. A lot of people might remember it was up in Bromley Cross.
Yeah.
I worked there for quite a few years. I then discovered door work. Just doing it part-time.
Yeah. You started at Ritz's, didn't you, initially?
I started at Ritz's after the fire.
Right.
We had an intake of new doormen.
Yeah. See, I've got great memories of Ritz's because that was before, in my life, when I was socialising, having fun, so drinking and partying, whatever. But before it got to a point where it became quite a negative thing in my life, you know, when I was doing it to excess. And yeah, Ritz's, I've got great memories of Ritz's. It used to be fun. It
was a fantastic place. I mean, I must admit, nightclubs weren't really my thing. No. They're not somewhere where I would like to go. You know, it's not really my music. It's not really my scene, but I found working in them absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Great camaraderie, great friends, great atmosphere. You know, a lot of people, the vast majority of people who went in there were just coming in for a good time. Yeah. And we were there for the ones that weren't. And that was a really great time of my life. As everybody who worked there at that time, you know, I think they'd have quite happily worked there for free. If they could have afforded it.
Did you told me you've got two brothers, is that right?
I've got two brothers, yeah.
And are they similar to you? I mean, were they
quite similar to me? They used to come in the club. They used to go out quite a lot, and quite often I'd see them in there. And
would they brag and say, "Yeah, it's all right, my brother's on the door"?
I'll get you kind of a little bit. Yeah, I used to try and get them in when I could, and then I'd run them home afterwards to make sure that they got home. But they used to come in every so often.
Now we talked about karate in your life, and there's lots of variables and lots of things change. It does in everybody's life, but occasionally, unlike me, I fell off the treadmill. You know, I had a nervous breakdown, and I had to start from scratch. I had a complete collapse. You know, everything stopped working. I couldn't function properly. You've made changes without maybe going through that process, you know, and making them by a bit more gradually and by good decisions. But I find with anybody that's done this, quite often, in order to do that, they do have one constant in their life, something that they've managed to hold on to, and despite all the change and all the variables and everything else and all the chaos even in their life, that this has given them something to attach to, some stability in their life. And for you, this was karate.
This was karate, yeah. It's been a constant in my life. And it's just something that I couldn't imagine my life without it. You know what I mean? It would be like if somebody said I couldn't do karate tomorrow, and people are like losing your right arm. It's you know, it's just something that's there. And
you got to high level. You're a black belt in karate, and you taught karate as well. Is that right?
I taught for quite a few years. Yeah. Only on I mean, I know you had Sandy Holt on, and he's somebody who has a very professional attitude. I've always considered myself as just really playing at him, but it is something that's very important in my life.
Yeah, I'd met Sandy a few times, but until I did the show with him, I didn't know him properly. And what a guy!
He's a proper. The thing is with Sandy, he's one of those great Bolton characters, isn't he? Bolton, you know, you can think of it. He's a bit of a hole, but he produces these fantastic characters, and he's one of them, isn't he?
And he really wise, and his philosophies and what he calls Sandyisms. I mean, I've studied Buddhism intently, and I've read many Buddhist texts, and I've spent many months on Buddhist retreats and so on. And Sandy hasn't done those things, but obviously through the discipline, like with yourself with karate, you start to realise most things revert back to the mind, you know. And through that, we arrived at the same place, a different vehicle, but with the same destination. He's a really
positive guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's always, you know, the stuff he puts on Facebook. He's just a very, very positive guy. And I think that is through. I mean, he's obviously fantastically disciplined. Yeah.
And with you, Andy, so the martial arts, for example, with karate, a lot of people think that it's predominantly about fighting, and it's not.
No, absolutely.
I've seen where it's discipline, confidence building, community, friendship, your physical health, helps your mental health. There's so many other aspects to it. From learning a martial art, especially if you get to a high level like you have, the benefits are exponential in every part of your life.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the main focus on me in karate was self-defense. That's why I went into it, and it's always been how. I've always been a firm believer. You know, there's lots of martial artists out there who will teach you how to pass belts and teach you how to win trophies, but I've never been about that. For me, primarily, it should be about self-defense, and that's what I've always tried to focus on. But there are lots of other benefits other than that. If it was just about self-defense, then it wouldn't really be worth doing it. It's like you're putting in a lot of training and a lot of work for something that may happen, but most probably won't. Yeah. But as for it, you know, focusing on violence, I don't think that does at all. No. It helps you to look at things in a lot more positive way. And again, from working the doors, you know, I know from experience that a lot of violence is just caused by people who feel that they've got to try and prove themselves in some way. And
it can be both sides. It can be the punters coming in who want to challenge authority, but it can also be the doorman as well.
It can be. It can be other doormen. A lot of, you know, I know when I worked at Ritz's, a lot of the trouble we used to get was from other doormen.
Yeah. And it's like anything. It just so happens that with doorman you've got this position of power perhaps and authority, but if you're not particularly peaceful and well balanced, if you squeeze somebody, you can only give out what you have inside. So if you're highly stressed or angry, you're going to have a highly stressed, angry response. You're peaceful inside, you'll have a peaceful response.
Yes,
the best doorman I've ever met, like yourself, there was a guy up at the Fanny's, the Queen Victoria, called Tony, and there was never any trouble because he was so bloody nice to everybody. Yeah. You know, he treated everybody with respect and a lovely man.
Yeah,
you know.
And those characters, you know, I've always thought that, you know, what you give out will eventually come back to you. You know, and if you do go down that road of sort of, you know, looking for violence and looking for conflict, it will find you, and one day, you know, it'll bite you in the arse. Yeah. It will come back to you in a big way.
There were two other doormen in Bolton called Earl and Eric, and they always did the doors together, and they used to do what used to be J2 or even before it was, you know, J2. And again, really nice men, you know, very big, you know, I wouldn't like to fall out with them, but they were lovely.
Yeah,
you know, so
and I think it does make you want to be like that, because when you do see that violence on a regular basis, it can screw you up inside, and you seem to see things repeating themselves all the time. That people get involved in fights. You think, well, what exactly are you fighting for? Somebody's looked at your girlfriend, or somebody's bumped into you, and you just think, I've never seen a fight that's been about anything that I've considered worth fighting for.
No.
There's certain things that you would fight tooth and nail for, and none of those happening rarely happen in nightclubs, and you just and it does make you want to avoid violence as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I'd seen some pictures, with your karate, and I think you to do martial arts to a certain level, you've got to be sort of what other people might seem a bit crazy, and I know, for example, when you do a punch bag, you don't use gloves.
No.
Yeah, I can't. I've got hands like a girl, and if I do a punch bag, it rips them to shreds.
One time I used to have hands like a girl, but you build that. Same with anything else. I mean, there's no way I could do the things that you do, but I'm quite sure that you didn't just go out one day and run 100 miles, did you?
No.
You built up to it, and it's the same with conditioning your hands. Yeah. I don't like to use gloves because you come to rely on them, and it can promote or allow you to get away with making an incorrect fist. So if you ever do have to hit something,
I'd never thought about it
harder
like that.
Anything harder than a punch bag, it can damage your hands.
It's ironic, but it's all about posture, isn't it? You actually want to hit something correctly.
There's a thing called a boxer's break, apparently, which is this little bone here. And that comes through. The reason it's called a boxer's break is apparently, so I believe, is that boxers, because they wear big gloves, they can get away with hitting with that side of the fist. But of course, this bone here isn't strong enough to. So if you do have a punch, without a glove, they tend to. And I've known lots of lads who've broken that bone there, and it would be.
It's funny. Those are the only two bones I've broken in my hands as well. Well, fingers and this side.
Right, the ones that are least likely to support it. So you try to, in karate, you try to use these two knuckles here with these two, and you try to build it up slowly over time. This idea about making your knuckles bleed, and so that's just Hollywood BS. You build it up slowly. I always tell my students, any bruising, any breaks in the skin, stop. Yeah. Let them heal. And just build it up slowly over many years.
The other picture, which I'd seen on, I think it's Facebook, is you with a few of your guys. I think you're all black belts in karate.
Yes.
And you're in waterfalls.
Yes.
Yes. Tell us about that.
That was, I'd because of work and stuff like that, because I run I should point out that I run, or I was teaching. Initially, I started the club up, and then a guy called Martin Skipper came to train with us. He's a guy who's done martial, originally from down in Kent. He'd moved for Bolton. I've never got to the bottom of why he moved to Bolton. I have no idea, but he ended up moving to Bolton. He's trained with lots of people, trained with Trev Roberts and people like that. In fact, he spent time with Trev Roberts, actually living in the pub at some time.
Brendan's actually supposed to be coming on the show, by the way.
Excellent.
He's agreed to do a show with me.
He's a grad. I've not seen him for many years, but I do remember him from the club.
Just come back from Paphos, where he was living.
Yes.
And he's now tattooing here, and his missus is coming over shortly. They've had to do it in 2 goes, I believe.
I saw some of the artwork he was doing on. I don't have any tattoos myself, but the artwork.
He's an internationally renowned, award-winning tattoo artist.
He was fantastic. I mean, I remember him when he was a young lad out drinking in the clubs.
I knew Brendan from going out.
And of course, everybody knew Trev Roberts, and everybody knew he was his son. But he came to train with us, which was with somebody with a martial artist was such an experience. We're only a small club, and he decided to come and train with us and has been there ever since. And he's now taken over the running of the club because of work. I can't teach anymore, but they used to go down to Wales quite regularly with a group. There's a couple of groups from down south that used to get together in the Brecon Beacons. And they used to do this waterfall training, and every year they said, "Well, we've had a fantastic time. You must come. And because of work and things like that, I could never go. And in the past couple of years, I went, but unfortunately last year it got cancelled, and it doesn't look like it's happened again. But at least I got on the last 2 years of it happening, and that was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Really,
so you'd go to sort of quite a busy waterfall, and you'd stand in the waterfall.
You stand in the waterfall
and doing your various.
You're just standing in the waterfalls. I don't do too much because he's quite slippy as well. But some of the guys really.
But with your gear on as well.
I used to take my top off because there's that much water. It gets very heavy, and if it hits you, I did actually. I think the last time I did it, I did end up going face first. There'd been a lot of rain, and it was the waterfall was really heavy. And it takes your breath away, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
As soon as you get in
cold
there.
as well, I imagine.
Yeah, it's very cold. You can't breathe, and it takes you a few seconds to. You feel like you can't breathe at all, and you feel like that you're going to suffocate. But you've got to slow your breathing down, and get to the stage where you can breathe and you can take it.
Do you know Joe Tierney?
I do know Joe Tierney.
Because I became friends with Joe a few years back. Used to see him with, I'd have a pint, and Joe would like come in, just have one pint, maybe two, on Hollywood Road there. But I got to know Joe, and he's a multiple world champion at karate. I think something like 8 times he won it.
He's phenomenal.
And he was on the front of all the, at the time, a lot of people bought magazines, didn't they? Fight magazines, and he was on the cover of all of them. What a guy.
I'd never really thought about doing karate. I just sort of it's something I just kind of fell into. But everybody had heard about Joe Tierney. It was a bit of a sort of legend in his own lifetime. And one of the things I remember when I was younger and we used to compete, and we were competing against his team, and that was a really big thing. There's a bit of a rivalry going on between our team and his team, and that was a really big thing. I can't believe I'm on this team, and we're taking on Joe Tierney's A team, his boys, and it was really, they were good days, and they were hard fought matches. His guys were, the same as him. You weren't getting on the mat and not, having an easy time. You're going to have to work for
Joel's a bit like Trev Roberts, where before you meet them, you hear stories about them, because they were like myths, legends, the man, the myth, the legend, local legends. And I heard loads of stories about Trev, and then I met him, and they never quite look like what you imagine in your head, do you?
No. You find, first thing that strikes you is what great guys they are, what lovely guys they are, really, not like you would imagine.
The way they portray themselves and project themselves, and they are with you, you think, well, if they are going to do something serious, they must be idiots, because they're actually still gentlemen. They're not. Yeah. I think anybody that is at that level of being able to deal with situations doesn't need to tell everybody about it. Doesn't need to brag. They're not full of themselves.
No,
they're very confident and sure, but usually gentlemen.
One thing I've found in martial arts is the guys who are really, really good don't need to be like that at all. They don't need to show
nothing
people.
To prove,
absolutely nothing to prove. And they're always absolutely gentlemen. Very, very humble people.
Yeah. I suppose you probably couldn't get to that level if you weren't disciplined and showed respect, because nobody would teach you.
No. And the thing is, I was... having a big ego is like having a sort of shiny car. Eventually, somebody's going to dint it for you, aren't they? You know what I mean? So
that's a good analogy.
Yeah, you need to be careful about what you do. Yeah, and I think if you do, if you are somebody who's like that, somebody who's egotistical, there's always somebody who's going to want to challenge you on it. But what's always struck me about martial arts, the really good people, the people who are fantastic, and when you meet them, they're just really genuine, down-to-earth people.
It's funny, you say Bolton, maybe not everybody knows where Bolton is, but we've got numerous world champions that came from Bolton.
Like I said about Bolton characters. You know what I mean? We seem to have a wealth of great characters in Bolton.
Like Robin Reed as well. I mean, a multiple world title holding boxer as well, and Amir Khan. So we've got lots of world champions.
We do. It's quite a good place to come to. Karate really for me wasn't really anything that I ever thought about doing. I'd never sort of thought about, I'll do karate. And I just started doing it from a conversation in the pub. I think I got to that stage. I was still quite young, but I'd started to work and I started getting some money. And all I was really doing was just drinking, just going in the pub. I had a good set of mates and we used to have a great laugh, but that's all I was doing. And it was getting to the stage where, we'd have 6 pints in an afternoon playing pool and then go home and have some tea, and then we'd be out Saturday night and I'd lose count of how many pints I'd had. I got to that kind of stage and then started getting in a little bit of trouble with the police, and I thought, well, this isn't really me. This isn't how I've been brought up. And that was one of the stages in my life where I thought I was looking for something else. So I'd started doing a little bit of training myself, just a little bit of running and stuff like that. But I'd always been fairly into cycling, so I was doing more cycling.
Yeah.
And just one of the guys in the pub said, well, I do karate, why don't you come down and give it a go? And so I'd had a few pints at the time, so yeah, of course I'll come down. Of course, when you sober up, you think, well, what have I done? Anyway, I went down, gave it a go, and that was it. Never stopped since. The guy who taught me into it didn't last much longer. He failed a grade and left karate, but I just carried on.
But he probably doesn't know that he, in doing what he did, changed the course of your life.
He changed the course of my life, just that one conversation in the pub. And life's like that, isn't it? It can turn on a sixpence.
And karate, although you wouldn't have known it at the time, has probably been one of the core things that have got you through life, in difficult situations.
Absolutely, yes.
I know some of the people are like that with the gym, for example, or whatever.
Yes.
As long as they train, no matter what life throws at them, they're okay.
Well, yeah, I did. Slowly over time, I did start to see improvements in my life. I was in a job that I didn't really like, that I hated actually. Didn't have a regular girlfriend, and then things started to change. I started, because more. I think if you've got a more positive attitude, then more positive situations will find you.
Yeah. So when I met you, Andy, you were holding down 2 jobs at that point, and you were a bin mum, and you were also on the doors as well at night time. So you 5 days a week during the day, and then flipping to nights at the weekend, and holding down 2 jobs.
Yeah, I was thinking I was doing like probably when I met you, I was probably doing a Thursday, Friday, and a Saturday night. Yeah. And I was quite happy to do. Back then, working the doors was good money. Yeah. And you could earn quite good money at it. Unfortunately, that's not the same now.
No. Also, I don't think it's great for your sleep patterns and your personal life.
It's not good for you. No, it's not good for either of those. No. But I did enjoy the door work. And like I said, it was good money, so I justified that by doing that.
So you said that you actually met your wife, who you know, not with your wife now, but your wife, you met her when you were working on the doors.
Yes, I did, yeah.
And you've got a couple of lads with her as well. I
certainly have, yeah.
And what are your lads' names?
They're growing up fast. They're Luke and Daniel.
And they're 15 and...
Daniel's 15 and Luke is 18.
Right.
Great young lads. My pride and joy.
Yeah.
Luke's got himself a lovely girlfriend, and he's hopefully after lockdown's finished, he'll still have a job, but he's got a job he enjoys.
And do they follow you in the martial arts? Have they taken any martial arts?
I've always said I would never force them to do. If they wanted it, then I would teach them. And both of them did when they were younger. They came up and did a bit of training, at the club where I train. They didn't really stick with it, but Daniel, the youngest now, he's now wanting to get into some martial arts, and he wanted to get into Thai boxing. He's wanted for quite some time, and he now trains with Sandy.
I was going to say, it's interesting because I did Kung Fu when I was a kid for a while, and you're doing karate. Now, these are traditional martial arts from the East, and they're on the decline in this country because a lot of people now are going into MMA and a combination of different martial arts, but they're not seen as critical. Now you need a stand-up game, a sprawl or a defence, maybe wrestling, and a lot of people do Thai boxing, and jiu-jitsu, and maybe some catch wrestling, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But karate and Kung Fu are on the decline, so I wondered whether they'd go down the route that you did, but Thai's still prevalent, isn't it? It's doing very well.
Well, I mean, it seems to me, over the years I've been in martial arts, it does seem to be that there seems to be a time for all martial arts, and they become very, very popular very, very quick.
Yeah.
And the same happened with karate. When I was getting into karate, kickboxing was the big thing. Everybody wanted to be a kickboxer, and now that's declined, and now it's sort of MMA has taken over. I believe before karate, they had the Kung Fu boom, and before that was judo. That had its time. They are still going. Judo's still going, Kung Fu's still going.
Yeah.
They will still go, but the time now is MMA, and everybody wants to be a cage fighter. If you're working on the doors, everybody you have a bit of a conflict with is a cage fighter, and whereas before it used to be, I'm a black belt or I'm a kickboxer, and it has its time, and I'm sure eventually, you know, MMA will move on and there'll be something else.
Yeah. With MMA, I'd found when I first started doing it, you know, and a lot of people said, "Oh, I'm a cage fighter," because I wanted the title.
Yes.
And then I'd talk to them and say, "Oh, okay, where have you fought? What have you done?" And they went, "Well, what did I've fought," and they said they had a couple of interclubs and things like this, and so they'd done a bit of jiu-jitsu, a little bit of boxing, and then they were a cage fighter in their eyes. And that's until you've actually got up there and fought in a cage, then you're not a cage fighter.
No,
you know, you're somebody that's perhaps done a couple of martial arts.
The same has been in karate for years and years. You hear somebody and they tell you they're a world champion, and then you find out that they won this world champion at a primary school just down the road. And you think, well, okay, then there's so many different organisations, and that's the side of the martial arts side. You know, this political division all the time, and these groups keep dividing up. There's never one group that'll stay together for very long, and they'll divide, and then somebody will be like, you know, the world champion of, because they've got some clubs over abroad somewhere, they'll call them like some world body, and if you win a bit of a competition, you're their world champion, so you're our world champion. Well, it's not quite the same thing.
Even with Thai boxing, there's a lot of organisations that just pop up. There's no real criteria. You can just be an organisation.
And so it's the same with the belt. I mean, I don't like telling people I'm a sort of black belt or a fifth dan, because there's so many people out there with grand titles and stuff like that, and you know, I don't want to be disparaging towards them, but you know, you look at some of the things that they teach and you think, well,
usually the first thing I ask about anybody is he a nice guy?
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
You know.
Are they a nice person? Are they a decent person? Yeah. And that's, like I said to you, the people who are really good are always the characters that you meet that are really, really nice people, and they're really, you know, very humble and very down to earth, you know.
Yeah, so Andy, going back to your journey now, up to this present moment, so your marriage didn't work. But what we talked about in the pre-show chat, which I really like, is that you're good friends and you get on with your ex-wife. Now, that's really nice. I always say there's two ways you can continue your relationship, and one is negatively, where you're falling out, and the other one is where you get on and you're friends, and it's really worth trying to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Especially if there's children involved, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And you can even be, although you're not together, still be a team where, you know, it means that it enables that if you spend time with the children between you, it enables the other person to have a life outside that.
Yes, absolutely.
And sharing the, you know, helping each other.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, I quite often get a phone call off my ex-wife. You know, one of them's done something, and you know, I need to address. We are very much a team, and we did. You know, when we decided something, we decided, you know, together that it wasn't working. We decided to split. We wanted minimum impact on the boys, so therefore we decided to do it. And you know, she's been absolutely great, and you know, I'm really pleased because you know, my boys are you know, like I said, my pride and joy, and they've got a great mother who really cares about them.
That's
lovely. They don't always appreciate it, of course, you know what I mean. Teenage lads, they know everything and you know nothing, but you know, I am very lucky in that way. Yeah.
Well, fast forward things now. So I knew you from town, working the doors, and then I met you outside that environment at the gym, and we started having a few chats.
We did.
And at this point, you're working on the doors, you're working your main job, which is 5 days a week on the bins. Your marriage hasn't worked out, you know. Fortunately, as I say, you know, you're still good friends, and that's great. And you weren't eating particularly healthily.
Like we were saying in the pre-interview, when you work on the bins, you've got to grab something to eat when you can. It's
pies,
quite,
butties, everything.
I know people tend to think that when you work for the council, you know, you're quite lazy. And to be fair, there's quite a few people who you could level that accusation at. But the guys who work on the bins, you know, it is very, very physically demanding. Anybody who thinks it's not, I'd suggest that they give it a go. You know, you're walking on average 10, 12 miles a day. I've been on rounds where I've walked like 18 miles a day, which, you know, is okay. But when you're doing it day after day after day, you know, they move a lot of weight. I've been on rounds where they move like 27 tons in a day. So it's quite physically demanding. So you grab something to eat whenever you can, and quite often it's sort of pie shops, chip shops, things like that. So diet wasn't great. I thought it was okay, but, you know, because I used to eat a lot of fruit and stuff like that. But it wasn't brilliant, and it was only when somebody pointed out to me that I've always somebody who's always put weight on very easily. So I'd started cutting back on fats and stuff like that, and it was only when somebody pointed out to me that I was eating almost all carbs. That we were eating, and I didn't think anything about it at the time. But then I started to do it, triggered something, and I started to do a little bit of research about balanced diet and about good, healthy, naturally occurring fats, and not the sort of manufactured. You know, I was like low fat margarine. Well, what is margarine? It's not anything that can.
It's shite.
it is shite. It's not anything that you know. I started to look back to what our ancestors would have eaten, and that is something that they wouldn't even recognise. You know, a lot of they call it vegetable oil, and it's not made from vegetables at all. No. It's made from. It's quite a harsh process.
So you've got all this going on in your life, not eating particularly healthy, and then this is maybe where the turning point, where everything starts to change. So, and we talked about some of the literature you read and some of the books you read. So maybe tell us, because to go from where you're at now to where you were then, you had to make some good choices. You know, and
I did
change direction.
I think the change in diet has come fairly recently. But as for changing the way that I think you know, you're sort of referring to, you know, when we've talked about The Secret, and before that I'd read the
Law of Attraction,
the Abraham Hicks book, Law of Attraction.
Esther Hicks and Abraham Hicks, wasn't it?
Jerry and Esther Hicks.
That's it. And Abraham
is somebody who she says that she contacts, and
he comes into her body.
Yes, I'm not sure if I believe that bit.
Yeah,
but what they were saying had a great resonance with me.
She was actually before The Secret was written.
Yes,
she was the first one.
Well before, yes.
Yeah, and
well before.
She was asked to feature in the movie for The Secret, because the movie actually came out before the book, which is quite unusual.
Yes.
And Rhonda Bryan did the book, and they had some kind of fallout. I don't know what went on, and so consequently she was never part of The Secret book, although she is the original.
I did wonder why she wasn't in it.
Yeah, she is the original person, the first one that started teaching the law of attraction.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was quite strange. Again, it was one of those sort of where you feel like you've hit the bottom in your life. And these things I always think happen to you. You know when they've happened, because they're always a whole load of coincidences that just seem to all line up with synchronicities. Yeah. And it was at a time where I was really feeling down, and I just happened to pick up a newspaper. I very rarely had time to pick up a newspaper, but this one time I had time. I bought a newspaper, was flicking through it. Very rare I got to the bit where the book reviews were at the back, but one of them caught my eye. And the reason it caught my eye is because I'd heard something on the radio before about this book, The Law of Attraction. So I read the book review. First time I've ever read a book review. And then again, I did something that I'd never done before. I went straight out and bought it. Something normally, if it was a book I was interested in.
You must have been ready for change then. You know,
absolutely, I was
looking for anything. You're surprised.
I don't think it was anything. I don't think it was anything, because normally, if I'd have seen a book that I was interested in, I would think, well, if I see it, I'll buy it. Yeah. But this, I purposely went out. Bought it, went to the bookshop, bought it and read it twice, and I never do that. I read a book once and put it down. But I mean, that I read twice.
When you're not in a good place, you are open to new ideas, whereas sometimes maybe you're very fixed in your ways, and that's why you were open to this.
To me, I don't feel it was a new idea. What it was with me, I'd found that there was points in my life, you know, when you just think about something, never thought it would happen. And then next thing, again, you know, you get a whole load of synchronicities and it happens, and you think, well, that's strange. I've thought about that. And then when I discovered that, I realised there was a whole industry around it, if you like. I mean, I don't mean that in a negative way. There was a whole load of people that
going on.
that had you know, and I was like amazed to discover that there was other people that thought the same way as me.
Bingo.
And there was and you know, there wasn't just one. There was dozens of books out there, and then you get on YouTube and you find out there's like, wow, there's this whole universe out there, and so. Then what it did do, it opened my mind to the concept that you could actually use that to your benefit. That if you can keep you can keep a positive attitude, then you will attract positive things in your life. And you don't get it right straight away.
No. What's amazing is through karate, you probably always known, even if it's not with your conscious mind, subconsciously, that your mind is very important. But this maybe just reminded you about something you already knew.
Well, it did, and it made me realise that maybe my martial art had become like a thing that I just did, and really the mind. If you just, and how can I explain this? If you just do something physically without preparing mentally for it beforehand, where you want to be, you're just going through the actions, you know. And it made me realise that really I need to sort of, you know, you need to think, well, where do I be? How do I want to be? How do I, you know, where do I want to arrive? What goals have I got?
You introduce intention into your life and purpose, and then you start to feel good, and it all starts to change.
And it does start, and things start to change. But it doesn't happen overnight. I think a lot of people discover the law of attraction or read about the law of attraction and think, right, well, I'll give this a go. I want a mansion and a Bentley. And of course, next week the mansion and the Bentley isn't there, and they fall out with it. And I think what they don't realise is that you will only attract what you believe you can attract, and belief is like a muscle. And like a lot of people, they go into the gym for the first time, they put as much weight on as they possibly can, and they sort of, you know, and then they realise they're not getting the results, and they give it up. And belief is like a muscle; it's something that you've got to start off. You've got to start off small, and you've got to build it up. And
so maybe the secret was like a reminder, and sort of kick-started the fact that you know that if you get the operating system right, everything else starts to fall into place. You experience synchronicity and alignment, and then you start to make good decisions because you feel good and you follow your bliss.
Absolutely. And not to care too much, you know, not to worry too much. Not to, you know, just to think, if you can just think, you know, good things are ahead of me. And without being too specific. You know what I mean? And
a very healthy lesson to learn as well, and to remind yourself, is when somebody says, oh, it's dead serious. Well, if you take life very seriously, it will kill you. You know, you have to loosen up, become a little bit more flexible, and you need to be able to laugh at yourself, not take yourself too seriously. Because I, you know, quite frequently do things. I used to be so worried about what everybody else thought that it was debilitating, and I couldn't make a decision without thinking about the consequences and other people's reactions. Whereas now I try and make this decision purely on how I feel. You know, and
that's a great way to be.
And laugh at myself a lot. You know, have a bit of fun. So, Andy, maybe tell us then, so from The Secret, you read a couple of other books beyond that. Can you remember any of those?
I can't remember them, no.
That's all right,
and I can't remember the titles, but it was very much, I found that they were all more or less saying the same thing. And a lot of people seem to be saying, especially when you get on YouTube, that this is the way you need to do it. And then quite often it'll contradict, and somebody else will, no, this is the way I do it. You know, write it down, make a list, look at it every day, or spend 20 minutes, you know, meditating and thinking about what you want. And I think what they're doing is they're saying is, this is what works for me. But what they should be saying is, it might not necessarily work for you. And what I find is that you can get a whole load of information, and then there'll be one thing that will stick in your mind, and you think, well, I like that, and I feel good about that.
Brilliant.
And
see,
that's what I'm going to stick with, and that's what I'm going to do, because I feel good about that, and because I feel good at it, it won't feel like a chore, or it won't feel, you know, there's no resistance in it at all. So,
Andy, you've actually read my first book, From Pills to Peace.
I have, yes. I bumped into you in the car park of the gym, as I do quite often, and you gave me that wonderful gift of that book, which I took home and read.
Wonderful.
Straight away. And the thing I took from that, I always try and take something, you know, if I read something like that, I was trying to take one thing from it. And the thing I took from your book, it was the impression that you gave me of somebody like yourself who'd hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Far worse than any sort of rock bottom I've ever hit. And even from that, you managed to completely turn it around and be doing things that, you know, I would consider things like that humanly impossible, you know, to do the kind of, you know, the kind of marathons that you do. Just doing an ordinary marathon would be like a big mountain to climb for myself. Yeah. And, you know, you've really completely turned things around, and so it's always good to get a perspective like that if you think, you know that your rock bottom is never as bad as somebody else's rock bottom.
I've given talks before where there's been a couple of young lads there, and they'll say, what does he know? And I'd say, well, I used to do X, Y, and Z, and I get their attention because I'd say, you think it's bad, you really don't know what bad is, you know, and tell them how bad it got. But I also tell everybody it's never too late, and everybody thinks you can actually get to a point where you think, this is it for me. I can't change this. There's nothing I can do. This is my stuck, you know. This is my life situation. I'm stuck in a rut, and you sort of accept this pending doom that life's over and you can't put yourself back together again. It is never too late. No. You know, you can start in the sewers and finish in the stars. You can put yourself back together again. And all I've done, I still have fluctuations and oscillations. I still have good days predominantly, but I still have days that aren't great. And all I've done is learn now to recognise the signs, so I know if things aren't going well, and I'm aware of that. And I have a tool set, and I can put myself back together fairly quickly.
You're only human, just like the rest of us.
Exactly, yeah.
Even though you're doing inhuman things like running 100 miles and things like that.
Well, yeah, we'll see. That's just the beginning. I have big plans, but I've been looking at some trails around the country where some of these trails are hundreds of miles long, and I'd like to, in the not too distant future, maybe next year, put together a bit of a plan where I attack one of these bigger trails, you know, that I'd love to do that. But
Pennine Way, something like that.
Well, there's the Pennine Way, there's the Trans-Pennine Way, there's the West Coastal Path, that's 630 miles long going around there. But these are just ideas. Ideally, I want to do, there's some trails I want to do abroad, but I've had to rethink that now.
Right.
You know, and... But yeah, I have, my brain's constantly thinking of new things I can be doing.
Wow.
You know, but
those are some great challenges,
I think the next step up will be the Ultra Great Britain, which is a 215-mile race across Scotland at the minute. But it's on the cards at some point in the future. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So if you could go back to your old self and tell you, one day you're going to be doing these like great things, what do you think your old self would have said?
And my old self would have had a line of cocaine, a pint, and wouldn't have listened.
Would have said you were daft, You're completely mad, fantastic.
I say in the book, and it's different for everybody, and you've got to do what works for you, but I also say you've got to try the 10 to find the 2. If there's 2 things out there that are going to work for you, if you don't try 10 things, you'll never find the 2 that do. So you've got to be open-minded, and you've got to try new stuff.
Yes.
You know, and you will then find what works for you. And it's different for everybody.
Of course it is.
You know, not everybody needs to go ultra running, but I do. Yes. You know.
Because you found your...
Yeah, what works for me.
You
and
found what works for you.
The other thing I've learned, which is really important as well, is what worked for me 5 years ago doesn't necessarily work for me now.
No,
it changes. Yes. So again, you've got to be flexible, you've got to be open to new things. And certainly as you get older, things that worked for you 5 years ago, some of those things might work for you, but also we're constantly changing, evolving and growing. So those things will be different. Yeah. So...
Yeah. Of course, and you're constantly learning. You never get to a point where, well, I know everything now.
Yeah,
you never, and things can come to you in the most surprising way. I'm reading a book at the moment, Ant Middleton's book. I think it's called First Man In, and the book's very interesting. It's very difficult to put down. It's all about how he sort of became a soldier and then sort of worked up to where he is now. But one thing he said out of it that really stuck with, really rang a bell with me, is he said. Make your enemy be your energy. And what he did, people not necessarily people in his past, but anything that he saw as sort of holding him back, or situations, things that he should have done that he didn't do, things that he did do that he shouldn't have done. rather than those being a negative thing, turn them into a positive thing, and make them, spur you on to defeat those things. And I thought that was very good. I'd always sort of, shied away from letting anger get the better of me and trying to shy away from that. But if you can turn it into a positive thing and turn that anger into, well, no, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. I'm not going to, and drive you on to better things.
Yeah. Use it for fuel.
Use it for fuel.
And then point in a positive direction.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Rather than, if you don't do that, it's going to drag you down, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you don't confront it, and if you do try and push it away, eventually it's going to come back and it's going to bite you in the arse. But if you can turn it into something positive, we've all had sort of situations in our lives where they weren't great, and we can always see ourselves as a victim of somehow. But then if we can say, well, I'm not prepared to be a victim. I'm going to defeat it.
Great lesson.
And it was a surprise. I didn't expect to get that from that book.
Yeah. You'll find that when you become empowered and a master creator and captain of your own ship, shall we say, that blame has no place. Blame has no place. No. I make my decisions. The outcomes are based on the choices I make, and they don't always work out the way that I planned. And
is it freeing when you realise that? Isn't it free you up?
Well, you're not a victim anymore, right? You're in charge.
You're in charge.
Yeah. And then you can take responsibility for the good stuff and the bad stuff.
Yes, of course you can. Yeah.
So we'll talk about where your life's at now, Andy. And the reason you're here today is because I bumped into you twice recently, and I believe there are no coincidences.
There are, no.
And you were walking around Angles Arc with your lovely lady Jo.
Yes, Rivington. Upper Rivington. I think we saw you at.
Yeah. And the reason I'm going to talk about now is when I saw you, from when I'd last seen you, and I'd seen changes in you over the years, but even your facial expression, the tension's gone out your face. You seem to smile a lot more.
Right.
And you seem a lot happier. And you now don't work the doors. Your diet's very different.
Yes.
You're healthier. You're working one job, not two.
Yes.
And when you started emitting the frequency of peace, love and light and being happy and content and changed the way you thought, Joe appeared.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So your whole world has changed because you changed the way you thought. And a quote I like to use, Andy, is, if you want to change your world, change your mind.
Yes.
And I love that. Change this and everything else will change too.
Well, again, a negative that turned into a positive. I went to a funeral, and it was somebody who was from a good friend, from a really good partner. Like I said, when I first started working in the nightclubs, it was a great time in my life, and something very important. And somebody from that time passed away, unfortunately, way before their time. And when I went to the funeral, there was a lot of people there who I'd not seen for years. And I bumped into them, and it was great to see them. But it reminded me that life is too short. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I need to. I had nobody in my life then, and I thought, I can wait around forever, and never meet anybody. I was on my own, and I thought, well, no, wouldn't it be great if I could meet somebody? And then, next thing.
Yeah. How did you meet Joe?
Plenty of Fish.
Right.
Which I always thought was, I'd been on Plenty of Fish before, and I'd thought of it as a bit of a negative thing. Because you tend to have the same conversations with the same people, with different people over and over again. Yeah. I've been on a few dates, but I wasn't really jazzed by it. But it just so happened that I went on this one time. I thought I'll just give it another go. Yeah. I'd normally went on it for a couple of weeks, got bored with it, went off it. And then it just happened to this one time, met Joe, and we clicked straight away.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Just one of those things. But it was after that. It was after that sort of,
And you've obviously got similar interests because I see you out walking a lot.
We love walking. Like you say, you like to get out in nature.
Being out in nature.
We love that. Joe's very much into gardening. We live in a flat, so we've not got one, but she's just got herself an allotment. At the moment, it's just a complete weed patch, but I know that over time she will turn it into something wonderful. She's actually our parking, where we park and outside our flat, she's got sort of flowers growing up the railings and things like that. She's planted all this because she loves growing things, and she's very green-fingered. So getting out in the countryside, where we've recently, we used to walk up round Jumbles, Entwistle, Whale. We've recently sort of discovered Rivington, and and that's a place where
peculiar.
we love that at the moment.
We had a spell, myself and Willow, where we'd go and we were Entwistle and Wayo a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then we flipped. I started exploring more trails, running, and I said,
Yes.
Willow, you really want to get on this,
Yes.
So I said, come walking with me in the trails.
Yeah.
There's what they call the Adlington loop, which is really nice.
Right.
And then there's the Angles Arc loop. And when you get
Yes.
to a White Coppice, you can go right or left and
Yes.
either go over the moors or come
You
back
can.
round.
I used to do quite a lot of running myself. Again, when I first started working the doors, there's a lad there called Keith. We're still in touch. I've just been talking to him the other day. Still good friends. He lives up the northeast now, but it's still we're still best mates. And we used to do quite a lot of running. Now he was a good runner. I've never been. I've been a bit too big to be a good runner. But he was northeast schoolboy champion. He'd been in the Marines. He could run like nobody's business, and he used to hang back for me. But we used to go up on the moors and we used to explore. No idea where we were going, following paths. We used to find old abandoned farmhouses and go and have a mooch around.
You feel like you're having a real adventure, don't you?
It was fantastic, and it was really good. It was a good time of life.
I love running on trails. The best time I run on any trail is the first time, and especially if I just put my GPS watch on. And I know I can fairly easily run 20, 25 miles if I need to without being under any kind of pressure. I can go further, but it's difficult.
Right.
And so I can hit a trail, not really know where I'm going, and just explore. That very first time when you're exploring, and every turn's new, left and right. You've never seen it before.
We're actually very lucky living where we do. Because not a lot of people know it, but there's a massive network of paths that probably most people don't even know they're there, and very few people use. And you can just go for miles, and you've got so much great moorland and tracks and trails, and you can go for miles and miles and miles.
3 years ago, I didn't know about all the trails here. Now I can literally 5 minutes from my house jump on a little path that connects to another trail, connects to another trail, and I can pretty much go anywhere with barely crossing a road.
And the thing that I like, I love history, and you think that a lot of these trails have been there for centuries, and they were probably because they were the way that the farm labourers used to get to where they needed to be. So there's probably people walk those paths and trails for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that really gets me when you're up on the moorland and you think, well, if I was back here 1,000 years ago, it probably looked pretty similar to
and I'd be going stand or deliver.
I think we do have some great countryside around, and we are lucky to live where we are.
So Andy, I'll briefly touch on now. We don't really talk about COVID much on this show. I think everybody's hears enough about that.
Yeah.
But maybe just about, when we went through lockdown, and I tell people about, basically how I managed, because initially I wasn't feeling great about everything. But I now don't watch the news. I spend as much time as I can outside. I avoid shopping. And I basically do things that make me feel good and spend a lot of time in nature. And I've had other guests on here, Sally Bolton, Alexandra Whittle, Sandy, who talk about, just basically tell me about, what they did to keep the spirits up, really.
Same as you, don't watch the news.
Yeah.
Hard enough for that. It's so much. I started looking into things myself, and I thought, well, that's not really right. Why is the media pushing this?
Yeah.
And, you start to go off down a rabbit hole, and I thought it's just better, for your own mental health. But I've been quite lucky because I've still been in work. I work for the council, and we've worked right through.
What do you do, Andy, now?
I don't work on the bins anymore. I went back to a job when I originally started working for the council. I was on their security team.
Right.
We do alarm response and key holding.
Yeah.
We do other, patrols and things like that. But basically, we look after the council's assets.
Yes.
And so, we had to be there. Some people still need access to council services and things like that, and the buildings still need to be looked after. So we work right the way through. We do a 4-on, 4-off shift basis, 12-hour shifts. So I was quite lucky that way that I was still working, but unfortunately, Jo wasn't. She is now. She's found some other work, but she wasn't. And she came over from Stockport to come and live with me.
Yeah.
Thankfully, but all her family are over in Stockport, so she felt very isolated. So on the 4 days off, I tried to spend as much time with her as possible, and we went walking and we went in nature and things like that. But some of my training had to go on a little bit of a back burner, but that's fine. That's great. I'd consider myself to be in a lucky position, because there's a lot of people who it has hit very bad. And I think we've talked before that some people who are isolated anyway, and probably their contact at work or going to the pub is the only sort of outside contact they get, and that's been taken away. So, really, I consider myself quite lucky, and it's not impacting me too bad. Other than, like I say, keeping away from the media, because it's
Well, you seem in good spirits, Andy. You seem like you're happy, healthy, and wealthy.
Yes.
And wealthy, the term, if somebody's wealthy, that means that they've got everything they need in life. It's not about material things.
Yes. No.
Love, companionship, food, shelter, and good people around you.
If you made a list of the good things in your life, I think you'd surprise yourself. At the good, positive things in your life.
Very, very good thing to do is regularly look back and think and remind yourself what you should be grateful for.
Yes.
And be in an attitude of gratitude, obviously.
Yes, very much.
Andy, thank you very, very much for coming on the show.
Brilliant.
Absolutely loved it.
Thank you for asking me.
Loved it.
I'm honoured to be asked.
So, folks, there'll be a show every week on this channel on YouTube, and if you subscribe, you'll get it automatically. This show also goes out on audio podcast, on iTunes, on Spotify, and on Podbean. You can get me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can buy the book From Pills to Peace, which I know Andy's read.
I have, yes.
And you can get that on Amazon in Kindle format, paperback, and now it's available as an audiobook as well in audible.com, Amazon, and iTunes. And you can also go to the website, midnightmcbride.com. And you can also listen to the radio show every Monday night on Salford City Radio, and that's the Mind, Body and Spirit show with Midnight McBride, and that's 94.4 FM. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'm going to leave you with a quote from the book, as I do every week. And this week it is, "The present moment has a round window. Anything with sides can't get in." And that means if you oppose something, if you're opposite, if you have an opinion or you're opinionated and you're judgmental, an opinion is an opposing view. And if you resist anything, if you're opposing anything, you have stress and tension in the system. And when you've got stress and tension, you can't be fully present. In order to arrive in the present moment, you have to remove stress and tension from the system and try and remove judgment and being opinionated. You need to show compassion, love and peace. This has been Midnight McBride, and I'll see you the same time next week. Shalom.